who brought you RuPaul's Drag Race and $1 Million Listing. This is World of Wonder's Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Fenton Bailey, co-founder of World of Wonder. And, we're doing the top 10 things that make us go
wow.
This week.
We should have told her. We should have let her
you have to go. Top 10 things that make us go
wow. There we go.
This week, though, because it's like September, post-Labor Day.
It's back to school.
It's back to school.
Everyone's got their thinking caps back on.
And what do you do after the summer vacations when you go back to school? You do a book report, right?
Yes.
So this week on the World of Wonder, on the Wow Report, it's all books. Books. I'm here with James St. James, literary sensation.
Oh my God, yes.
Author of Party Monster, author of Freak Show, editor of the Wow Report.
It just goes on and on and on.
It's and our very special guest, Jacquie Lawrence.
Author of one book.
The
list does not go
but
on.
it's a hell of a book, I will say that.
And that's what we're here to talk about.
Fantastic.
Yes.
We are author of Different for Girls.
That's right.
Number 10.
At
your wedding, I was honored to speak at your wedding. I gave the sort of best man speech.
We do have to say that you guys have known each other for about 40 years.
Okay, so
400
Fenton,
years.
400 years. So
Okay.
Fenton calls me his oldest friend, not longest
Oldest
friend.
friend.
I am older than him by 3 months, and he's turned that into
30
3 decades.
years. So it's a miracle.
So we're
she
very,
can still...
very old friends. And actually, as we talk through the genesis of the book,
Yes.
Fenton does feature rather largely. I have to
Wait,
say.
are you Tom?
I am not
the
Tom.
The hot
No,
heterosexual
no,
man,
I'm like-
Tom?
I think I'm called Felicia or something. It's, it's different for girls, right? But actually, you should really explain different
Yes.
for girls.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
different to go.
And
yes,
talk to
I
as
will,
close to the mic as you can.
as I
as
possibly
if you're
can.
about to suck a big penis.
which I do on a regular basis. So yes, I'm a dirty rabbit lesbian, as you may have guessed. Anyway, and I used to be called the filth peddler of Channel 4.
Yes.
In that I used to peddle all of their filth. So I used to commission all the lesbian and gay programming.
You did.
For the
doing
channel.
God's work.
And I swear to God, a very, very populist newspaper in Britain did call me the filth peddler of Channel 4. So
That's
if you have any filth, please let me peddle
That's
it.
something to put on your tombstone.
Right.
That's
I am
wonderful.
Going to. I'm
Is
going
that that's
to.
not on the book blurb though, is it?
It will
Because you're
be.
trying to
It will
you're
be.
trying to be
You
Jane
know,
Class it up a
Austen.
little
I
bit.
tried
Yes.
to kind of reinvent myself, and then
Right.
I decided actually it was probably better if I just stayed with the old Jacquie Lawrence, because that's much more sellable. So I was at Channel 4 peddling all of this filth, and I have to say that Fenton Bailey and Randy did supply me with a lot of that filth to peddle.
Lots of shoveling.
She always commissioned these. Well, you actually made
I
some
did.
of them yourself.
Well,
Wait,
I
did you read the history of penises
yeah,
or
history of masturbation?
history of masturbation?
I think we did play around. Yeah, gay.
You commissioned the history of prostitution.
I did.
At Sky.
I did. That's
Did you do
right.
101 Rent Boys?
Yes.
I did.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I did the real Ellen story, which I think was probably the least filthiest of all we did. So I was at Channel 4, and Queer as Folk had just hit the screens. We were very involved in that. And the powers that be at Channel 4 said to me, look, can you think about the lesbian equivalent? So I did.
This is pre-L word.
This is
Yep.
the story.
Oh.
So what happened was
Oh.
I actually left Channel 4 and joined World of Wonder as their head of development UK. Open brackets UK, close brackets. And so I developed this kind of this idea about a group of lesbians living in London, clubbing it, drinking it, living it large. And we had the development, took it to Channel 4, and at the very same moment, the L words hit the screens, and I think it was bought by it was made by Showtime.
Showtime, yeah.
And in the UK, it was bought by Live TV. And I swear this is a direct quote by a straight white man in a suit. He said to me, Jacquie, we can't go ahead with this development because the great British public can't cope with more than one lesbian drama series at a time. Okay, that's what he said. The great British public cannot cope with more than one lesbian drama series at a time. He's clearly
just
never
no-
been a lesbian because lesbians can cope with a lot of drama at the time simultaneously.
But there's
And
just
I
no
kind
room
of-
in anyone's heart.
No.
For
I mean,
more
come
than
on,
you.
fair's
I'm
fair.
like,
One's
I'm
in.
like, okay, if you apply that template to
I
police
know.
programs, to
procedurals.
to
the
medical
legal
to
shows,
hospital,
medical
all
shows,
of
Yeah.
that,
crime,
at
invest-
all,
right.
at all. So at that point, I kind of took the development, and I left television for a while because I wanted to start a family, and working in television and trying to get pregnant sometimes just doesn't work. Fenton's glasses just fallen down. So I took the development with me and I put them in the top drawer. The lesbians put them in the top drawer of
And they
my
fermented.
desk.
They bubbled up.
And
they kept going.
started creating, let me tell you. They created now and again, let me out. And then realised it was 10 years later. And in those 10 years...
Oh, was it 10 years? Oh, my
it
God.
was 10 years later. In those 10 years, lots had changed. You know,
This is like from 2004 to 2014,
exactly.
around that period.
Around about that
so
period.
much was
so
going
much
on.
changed. We had changes in family law. We had changes in fertility law.
just
we had
culturally, just
changes in
the-
adoption law. We had changes in marriage law. So, and I had gone through those changes. I had moved from, hip Camberwell in South London to the suburbs, to West London, to
It's very
Chiswick.
posh. Went posh.
And I'd met my wife and we got married and we'd had children. And I thought, you know what? If I had changed that much in 10 years, then the lesbians in the top drawer, they will have changed as well. So I got them out of the top drawer because I thought, look, I need to do something with these lesbians. I need to tell their stories. I need to tell my stories. And it wasn't a coming out, clubbing, dancing, shagging narrative anymore. These women were going through marriages, were going through divorces, they were having affairs, and they were doing all the things that families do in the suburbs. So I actually call it the real lesbian housewives of West London because that's exactly what it is. And you know what? This morning I thought there's a franchise. We've got to do the real lesbian housewives of West Hollywood. We've got to do the real lesbian
Of
housewives
Miami, of Chicago,
exactly.
of
But
Bangkok.
I thought I'm going to write. Yeah,
Always
all
trying to
right
get
then,
the cock
I
in
know.
there. Like,
It has to get the cock in the lesbians. And I thought, this is going to be a book. I really, really, because, I'd kind of set up a little office. I wasn't
I'm
really
amazed you. I'm
involved in
amazed you wrote
television.
it. You actually, and this is where I take my hat off and bow down before you, and also before you.
I do want to say, just point out real quick that you did write here. You wrote a review of the book in 2014.
Oh, okay.
Calling it. You might want to just sort of go through it real quickly. You said
Okay.
you're going to set yourself on fire if you read it or something.
I said a review of a Jackie Collins novel once said it was so hot it should be printed on asbestos. The
love
same goes for different for girls.
Love it.
Yes. Make sure you have quick access to the ocean because in between chapters you'll need to take a plunge to stop yourself bursting into flames.
And if that isn't a blurb for the back cover, I don't know what is.
I think we got a couple of
Who
thousand
wrote this?
sales.
You did.
It's not just packed full of delirious, unashamed, unabashed, ever inventive sex. It also has a plot with fabulous twists and turns and cliffhangers aplenty. Especially the end that will leave you panting for the sequel.
See, now I haven't gotten to the
Shit,
end yet.
no
I
go.
started it.
Oh, okay.
I'm with Cam and I'm with Fran and Tom and everybody, and I did notice that there's a web series as well on.
So
let's talk a little bit about that.
So what happened was I wrote the book, self-published it. I've learned a lot from Fenton. I have to say, I have to be really serious here. But Fenton is one of these people, and Randy, and you guys, all of you. You go out and you say, okay, we may not get the money for this, but fuck that.
It
We're
needs
going
to be out there.
make it. It needs to be out there. So I self-published it myself. It's quite easy to do, and it's sold as an ebook, probably around about 10,000 copies. And then a publisher came in, Martin Zeit.
I love that. They came in after the fact.
After the
Yeah,
fact.
once
After
you
the
prove
fact.
it.
Exactly.
Wait, hold on.
So
you
it's an
self-published
ebook.
something, and then they came.
Then they
in.
come and say,
Yes,
"Oh, this is
because
doing
what
well."
happened was I sent it to a few publishers,
No,
and
no.
again, the great British readers are
Well,
not
you have to
ready
admit, it's
for-
pretty steamy.
It
I
is
mean,
steamy.
it's pure
Someone
undiluted.
Said,
Someone
said, what
Yeah.
did they say? They said it was a cross between Omar Sid Mopin and Jackie Collins.
Yeah,
That's
was you.
perfect.
Jackie
That was
Uh-huh.
you. So then it was published as a paperback
Right.
because ebooks are fantastic.
I've really never heard of that happening before, where a publisher notices that the sale is
Yeah.
climbing, and they say, well, we want someone to make some money off of this too. That's really like an interesting story. That's fascinating.
Slightly cynical.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. So it has now, I think, sold in the region of 20,000 copies. And I've been told that, for a debut novel, that's pretty good. But
And wait, there's more.
But there's
I
more.
mean,
There's more. Oh
right.
no, I've got a trilogy, Tony. I've
Oh
got
well,
a
it's
trilogy.
not just radio, but she's also then wrote the scripts for the TV
So
series.
then
It's like-
I thought, you know what, this has to be, because once you never really leave television. do you?
Right. And you're seeing it all in your
on
head,
hand.
and you're
So-
casting it the entire time.
Exactly.
And
And
you
so...
and you have Guinevere Turner
Well,
too.
wrote
who-
the
yes.
script, again, sent it off to a few broadcasters, not really ready for that yet. So raised the money through Indiegogo, private investors.
An extortion of her friends.
Some would say exactly.
But no,
Who,
but
of course, is no.
God bless crowdfunding, though. I mean, 10 years ago, it wasn't there.
Right?
We
Yeah.
raised,
So many
no,
things.
we raised, I think, about 12% of the production budget via crowdfunders, and bless them, most of them were lesbians. I have to say, everyone says that
I'm a
lesbians don't
lesbian.
spend. Lesbians do, and they've supported it so well, and we raised enough money to make 5 episodes, which we did, which have been out on the web since March on a YouTube channel called Lesbian Box Office.
Yes.
LBO.
LBO. Uh-huh.
So, and that it's, I think we've got up to just under 300,000 views there, and we've just raised enough money to make the remaining chapters, episodes. You see, I'm still confused between the book and the web series, and we're going to shoot those in September, October, and it will be on your screens by the end of the year.
The cast is really
the cast is
fantastic.
It is a great
Thank
cast.
It looks like you've spent $100 million on it. The cinematography, everything about it is so beautifully shot and so well done. I really have to commend you for that.
Can I thank you for that? Really, really, that means a lot. Our cinematographer is a woman called Una Menges, and her father is Chris Menges, who won Oscars, I think, for the Dying Rooms, for Cares. He's an Oscar-winning cinematographer, and so to get his daughter, who has shadowed him for the last decade, to come on board, you're right. She makes it look like $1 million. You know, we wanted it to look like it was Hollywood in West London, and I think it does.
It feels like it,
And
yeah.
we've got 3 LA-based cast members. We've got Rachel Shelley, who was in the L Word. We've got Guinevere Turner, who was in the L Word. We've got Caroline Whitney Smith, who's been in Revenge and all of those lovely, melodramatic. And it is,
And you've got some hot guys as well.
We've got hot guys, and let me tell you, you haven't finished the book. The remaining episodes that we're going to shoot, as I say, this fall, have got some really good male sex scenes.
But
we haven't
really-
talked about the female sex scenes yet, have we?
Well, I was reading when I made this speech, Best Man speech at Jackie's wedding. I thought I'd read some out. And she was like, no.
I just say, yeah.
She's like,
so-
there's children in the
yeah,
room.
children, great aunties, great uncles.
Because I thought they should know
what you're marrying into.
So I didn't get to read them out, but I think I got a point
Message
across.
across. He got the message across. Yeah.
But I really recommend you read Different for Girls. It's on Amazon, right? You get
is,
on
it
Amazon.
is, it
It's
is.
a fantastic read, and then you can read it, and then you can watch it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
LBO, Lesbian Box Office, on YouTube.
And we can be have you been scribbling away at volumes 2 and 3?
Yes. In actual fact, I've got enough material now for another 2 series.
Oh, wow.
So what we're hoping is that this will go out. A broadcaster will do exactly as the publisher did, which is, hey, this is really interesting. Let's buy it. And then we'll get the money to make the rest.
It's a success story.
Fantastic,
Fantastic.
right? Fantastic.
Mhm.
Well, you've had books turned into movies, James.
have,
In
yes.
fact, the 2 books you've written have both been turned
2
into
for 2. I'm betting 1,000.
Yes, Freak Show has just been turned into a movie with Trudy Styler directing,
Yes, and
starring
Bette
Bette Midler.
Yes.
Yeah, you got
Cheers
it.
to you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
And of course, before that, Randy and I destroyed James's book, Party
No,
Monster.
it is a cult classic that has
Yes.
a very rabid following.
So we're counting down the top 10 books that made us go wow, because this is the Wow Report, the book. It's a book report.
Yeah,
it's the
back
Wow
to
Report,
school
the back to
version.
school
Uh-huh.
version. So what have you got for us at number 9?
Number 9.
One of my great icons, one of the people I love more than life itself, is a man named Wayne Koestenbaum, who did, this book. I know you do. It's called Jacquie Under My Skin. Okay? He sort of does what Susan Sontag does. He takes these sort of pop culture, non-academic content, and he does it in a very intelligent sort of academic way. It's very highbrow. He did this book called Jacquie Under My Skin, in which he
He's obsessed with Jackie O, right?
Yes, he is. And it's this sort of incredibly nuanced dissection of the bit of minutia about Jackie O. There's chapters called "Astonished Jackie." There's a whole chapter on her sunglasses and scarves.
Oh, I love
this.
this.
I love
it.
Jackie interpreting ordinary objects is a whole essay that he does. There's one Jackie in the media.
The writing style is really super, super dense and very clever, and every sentence is crafted.
Susan Sontag
like a
thing where it's
Fabergé
numbered,
egg. Right.
and it's and he goes into, just like I said, he dissects just every little bit of minutia. He did it with Andy Warhol too.
Did.
It's really fantastic. He did a book about the opera called The Queen's Throat, I think. I just finished one this week called On Humiliation. It's a big book of the big book of little humiliations. And the New York Times says it's something that really makes you squirm. It's an exercise in auto-humiliation and calculated debasement, which is really right there.
Exactly.
The first half of it, he takes references from pop culture and literature, and it's like Jean Bonnet and Judy Garland, and there's some Simon Cowell in there and Borat, and like it sort of talks about what humiliation is and how it differs from shame and how it differs from guilt. And humiliation is basically when you feel you deserve it, and that's like it's you've been shamed, you feel bad, but secretly you feel that you deserve it, and that leads into all sort of psychosexual things and things like that. The second half of the book is he lists every time he's ever been humiliated in his entire life. Okay?
How many?
It goes on, and I just want to read you some of the chapters here. There's a chapter on the smell of his father's feces when he walked into his father's bathroom after he took a shit when he was a child. There's
why is that humiliating?
It's for some reason he goes on and on and on about how he was embarrassed for his father, and he was embarrassed for the whole idea of the smell of feces and how our own personal feelings about it. There's times when he gets snubbed at parties. There's bad reviews he gets. There was one chapter that just goes on and on. He's in a bathroom cruising the urinals, and there's a man in a wheelchair, and the man in the wheelchair is snubbing him because he doesn't find him attractive enough, and it just goes on this whole thing. It's absolutely batshit bananas. There's times where he was masturbating to a student of his. He's a college professor. It just, I mean, it is
Jackie.
But I'm
different for girls and different for.
But the way it differs is that he approaches it in this extremely dry academic style that has like a hint of camp to it. But it's just, he really, like I said, he'll take something like
sort
a
of
fart in
semiotic.
third grade and write 40 pages on it. And
well, let's hope for you.
It's absolutely, but like I said, his name is Wayne Koestenbaum, and he does these really incredible books, and I urge everybody to get a chance.
I'm going to read that.
Absolutely
to
going
go.
to. Absolutely.
What do you have for
It's
us?
available on Amazon.
It is,
like
yes.
where all books are sold.
That's
Well,
right.
so I picked for number 8.
Number 8.
Well, you know the book report. The whole concept is you read a book in the summer, right?
Yes.
And oftentimes you don't do the work.
So you haven't read this book?
I haven't read this book. But this book is incredibly special.
Oh, you liked
to
the
me.
blurb.
This book is incredible. Well, it's called Thomas Hardy, Half a Londoner by Mark Ford. And I happen to know this author, or have known this author. I happen to have known this author in the biblical sense.
Well,
in the big.
there is a link in all of these stories here.
Right, when we were
Does
students
Mark
at Oxford.
knows this? Does he?
Does he know this now that I'm
Does
saying?
he remember?
Does he remember you in the way you remember him?
Well, but here's the thing. Okay, he's a poet. Now, he was a very brilliant student and a poet. And I remember sitting in his room telling him his poetry was awful. I mean, really.
That's
like,
so offensive, right?
'Cause,
award-winning,
right.
Is there a part in this book
Nobel
about the
Prize
humiliation?
winning, and
I
Fenton
mean,
is like, no, pass. I think we'll pass on it.
I was like, into pop culture and Warhol, and he was into sort of literary things.
Rimbaud and
so
Verlaine.
it was never going to work out. Yes, he was totally Rimbaud and Verlaine. I was like, up your ass, Rimbaud. But we fell, well, I was going to say we fell in love. That's very presumptuous. I was completely obsessed
Gobsmacked.
and besotted with him. Him less so, I think. But, students experiment. I think
Just boys being boys.
It happened, but here's the thing. He's written this book, Thomas Hardy, Half a Londoner. He's written this beautiful book all about Thomas Hardy.
Wow.
The thing about Thomas Hardy is our relationship was consummated in Wessex. We spent all this time one summer vacation in Thomas Hardy country. And the thing is, he's written several books of poems, which I have bought. I mean, I've not talked to him in many, many years. But he writes these books of poetry. They're very sort of hard to read. Like, you know, I'm like scouring, where's my name?
I was going to say, are you reading them in a closet
I'm not
with a
so
flashlight?
crass that it's like, it's got to be my name, but I'd be like, that detail, that sort of, and there's nothing in these poetry books. So, and then I learned he was writing, I mean, this book, and I just got the book, and I don't know when to start reading it because I'm going to have several hot flushes, but mentioned or not, because, for example, we were down, it was raining all the time. We were like, let's go to Thomas Hardy's cottage. And we went to Thomas Hardy's cottage in Dorset. And it was a very...
your long hair and
everything
yes,
it was very
and
good.
Your cigarettes.
Oh, God, I'm so crying.
So,
but basically...
But I mean, surely there's somewhere when he decided to do this book, or even whilst he was, it must be.
I'm sure
there
not.
must be.
I doubt it.
When you're writing any love scene, you're just delving back in everything you've ever
Absolutely.
done.
You're very sweet.
No, absolutely. You know, I would say that I definitely, there's some of me. I did once say, there is some of me in every one of those lesbian characters, and I realised how
Some
that
of
could be.
Well, they're all whores, so that figures.
I have been part of all of those. Absolutely, there's no way that you did not cross his mind.
Yes.
Well, we will see. But here's the thing: is it all ended?
No, wait,
terribly.
is there some humiliation or shame
the
about this?
Saving the best till last. Yes, that's significant because, long story short, or short story long, at the end of a few weeks of mad, passionate thing, he went away. He came back. He decided he wasn't gay. We weren't. This was the end of that. He's happily married. So I've just out it. I mean, who knows? I feel a little. I don't know if I should even be sharing this. Too late now, I guess.
I don't know if he's actually listening, though.
This is definitely.
He's a professor at the University of London. He's very famous poet.
And he's what? He's married in the.
Married with kids, yeah.
To a lady.
To a lady.
To a lady.
To a biological.
Lady
yes, very
Lady
to a lady.
Ford. This is definitely the right Mark Ford. You haven't mixed this up with.
No, I have
someone
not
else.
mixed this up.
Okay.
No, this is he because I've done a little cyber stalking and
a little
seen the pictures.
Facebook time, a little.
And has he held?
He's not really a social media person. He's a true literary professor.
So
type person.
we're going to be posting some pictures of the two
Yeah.
of you along with this article, or along with this post.
Yes, well, those
Do you
stories.
have them? Do you have pictures
I
of the
have
two of
a
you
couple
together?
of pictures. Yeah.
Oh.
And my biggest. Oh well, that's too personal.
No,
my biggest regret.
We
There were
can
all
cut it.
these.
We can
There
cut
were
it.
all these letters between us, and when I sort of moved to New York to kind of get away from the whole trauma of the whole thing.
Oh, so
and,
this is the big-
and
Wait,
I.
that's how
he
you
is
met
your-
Randy? Randy was the
Yes.
rebound?
Yes, Randy was. Oh, there's a whole separate chapter.
Oh, I
But,
didn't realize. I didn't realize you have
Yeah.
talked about this guy before.
Yeah.
You have talked about him lots of times. I didn't realize he was the your tall dark stranger.
This
There
was
you
the
go.
book. Oh,
this
this is my tall dark stranger right there. Wow.
That's why we have this storefront studio. Anywho.
But this was the big guy. This is the one that you went a
This
little
is the big
crazy
guy.
about.
Yes,
This is
yes,
the
yes.
big
This
guy.
was
You
my
heard this, the
bunny
big guy.
boiling.
Yes,
Yeah.
when you
I
went a
didn't
little
realize.
mad.
Yes.
Wow.
Deflated his tires on his bicycle. Okay,
In
well,
fact, wait,
I think we should.
I remember one time you were going to write a book about this.
though that
Well,
that's
he clearly has
that
written
is
it about
I
clearly
hear he's written the book about you.
yes.
I
My,
love
well,
that.
my intention
love
is still to
this
write a
story.
book, but
You must.
we have to take a quick commercial break. This is the Wow Report on Radio Andy, Sirius XM, and we're listening to a special edition. It's the book report. It's back to school. We'll be right back after the break.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report.
Because we're going to go a little long with Victor, right? And
Yes.
then okay.
What? How dare you? How dare you?
What?
Aside from RuPaul, Kabuki Starshine is the only successful ex-club kid alive today. Girl, how dare... Oh, we have some bones to pick with you. I see what's going on already.
It's all on tape, James.
Oh, as well it should be. I'm glad it is. By God, I've got a few things to say to Mr. Victor Krona.
Well,
A lot of people do.
Wait, do they really? Hold on, before we start real quick. Have you been getting some blowback?
Of course.
Yeah? Like
Oh,
a
God,
lot?
yes. Well, I mean, we can save it for the.
Yeah,
yeah,
let's
yeah,
save
okay.
it for- save it for the show. Okay. So, welcome back. Welcome back to the Wow Report. You know, it's the end of summer. So we normally on the Wow Report count down the top 10 things that made us go, wow! This week, though, because it is the end of summer, it's back to school, we thought we'd do a book report.
Yes, fabulous.
Tom Campbell is away, sadly, but we're very lucky to have in his place Victor Corona.
The one and only, the fabulous, one of our oldest friends.
Oh.
Hi, honey.
Along with James St. James, literary sensation.
Yes, one of the not successful club kids.
Editor of the Wow Report, nursing some bitterness here, unusually.
Number 7.
So Night Class is an autobiography. It's a memoir of
Yes.
sorts. It's you going as your travails through downtown New York City,
Yes.
the club scene. Tell us a little bit about the genesis of the book and how it started and what it means to you.
It's a 6-year immersion into downtown subcultures, from Lady Gaga's Lower East Side crew to the surviving club kids still in New York, to my month or my summer of being Michael Alig's assistant.
Oh, I do remember that.
And to, the midnight madness of what I think is my favorite place, my favorite nightclub in New York, The Box.
Oh, right. Okay, Kayvon's place, right?
Well, he hosts on Friday
Right,
nights. It's co-founded by Simon Hammerstein and Richard Kimmel.
And Raven O's like...
Raven O is the MC.
I love Raven O.
Yeah.
And everyone's favorite Amanda Lepore hosts on Thursday night.
Sure. Okay.
So-
But this is something that you are an NYU professor.
Yes.
Well, that's what's so great about it, right?
Because
Because
it's a
there is
sociological expedition.
there's a genre of downtown club literature, but none, I believe, written by a professor.
Right. It's interesting that you have an academic background and you were able to bring that to your research of nightlife. You go back all the way to the Warhol days and before, talking about New York nightlife, and you sort of tie it all up in a little bow. Talk a little bit about that and the relationships between the different scenes and the commonality.
Well, I kind of try to trace a lineage among these different downtown generations and what I see as their obsession with fame and spectacle and the kind of sad delusion that emerges as a result.
Huh, that's interesting. So fame is this kind of disease, right? The sort
Yeah.
of, we like to say it's a disease of which there is no known cure, the disease of the 21st century. But you've written a book about it, so do you really believe it sounds like you think it's a bad thing.
I think it's dangerous, and I think stories like like Michael's and other people. Sorry.
Yes, no, I'm just trying to get you to
Yeah.
feel the...
And I think they're cautionary tales.
Mm-hmm.
I saw an ex-student from Columbia who's now here, a filmmaker in LA, and he said that this book was kind of sad and scary as a kind of cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a story about what happens when you invest too much of yourself in this project that is so hard to really derive fulfillment and a sense of achievement from.
Well, it's also, it's you can get this sort of downtown fame, but to actually monetize it or capitalize on it or use it as a catapult into mainstream success is so difficult. And I think that's where a lot of people get very bitter.
Yes.
And you talk a little bit about in the very beginning about Penny Arcade is one of those people that talk a little bit about that section and how she's like an old Warhol superstar who never really managed to get respect in the New York club scene, or she's famous outside of New York more probably than she is now.
Well, I respect Penny as someone who...
I love Penny, but by the way, I think she's fabulous.
But she is also, I think, a very angry person and a very bitter one. As I say in the book, she's been upset with me for writing about basically anyone who's not her, and I call her in the book the erasure sheriff for going around talking about the erasure of downtown history. And frankly, I think not everything is worth remembering. I think, there's a certain a cultural labor market judges what's considered valuable, and
Well,
you
but wait,
can't go.
who is the person to decide what's valuable? Because to me, I think that a lot of the obscure stuff, whether it's Club 57
Right.
or a lot of the things that get short shrift in the history books, I think it's all relevant and it's all fabulous. I mean, who are you to say that it is or isn't relevant?
Well, I don't. I think I leave it up to the market. I leave it up to the population.
Yeah, he's saying the what is that? The dead hand. What is that?
The invisible hand,
Thank
Adam
you.
Smith.
Yes, there you go.
The
I
invisible
don't
hand.
know
of-
this expression.
The invisible hand of the market kind of determines what rises to the top. That said, in chapter 1, Staph infection, the title emerged from my dear friend Michael Womack. This kind of disease, famed disease that you talked about. She was able to extract very effectively. I'm looking at your T-shirt. Very effectively, these elements from downtown subcultures and kind of suck them out of downtown and sell them to the world. She knew how to kind of read the laws of the market, see what would sell, and has done that very effectively. And I ask in the book, is Penny just upset that she was able to do that well, and Penny has not, and others haven't, and have ended up penniless?
That's interesting. There's also a little bit about how one of Pat Field's people are saying that Lady Gaga was not. She was not inherent. She was not a part of the club scene. She wasn't like an organic member of the club scene in the way that like Lady Miss Keir was.
Right.
And that she sort of like swooped in, took what she could from it, and left a little bit. Is that fair to say, or is that not fair to say?
I think it's a common sentiment among downtown people. Lady Fag has said this publicly. She said it at the Museum of Arts and Design panel that she was on, and I quote her from the book, saying, I think it's a common sentiment. That said, I still think of myself as a fan. I think she's enormously talented. Yeah. And I actually admire that kind of savvy. I admire that kind of ability to read the tea leaves, to look at a culture and say, this is what will sell.
I mean, it seems to me that the downtown culture is ahead of the curve of pop culture in the sense that the sort of techniques it uses and what it embodies is what you will see iterate into the mainstream in a number of years. Yeah. And what has downtown culture been but a giant sort of mashup and sampling machine? And I think, as Victor puts it, certain things rise to the top through fair
like
means
kabuki.
or foul, however it is. I think it's more sort of chaotic and ultimately random necessarily than a meritocracy. But you're right, it's cruel in that many people who are very talented get left behind, and many people who know how to play
like
the
Fenton
game.
or Randy or David LaChapelle or Lady Miss Keir or anyone else who just did not able to make it.
We made a film about Robert Mapplethorpe some years ago, and it was brilliant
didn't make
how
it, like
Mapplethorpe was strategic and very savvy about advancing his reputation.
It's a shame he never went anywhere.
And building a career. What?
Right, your film documented that beautifully. His own interest in kind of discerning what would be lucrative and what would. Yeah,
it's sort of a brutal savvy. And I think our sort of our age is Madonna's. I mean, she
another one who didn't make it.
Necessarily completely.
Another downtown person who just went absolutely nowhere.
Club kid. I'm talking about club kid.
No, she wasn't a club. No, she wasn't a club kid.
But she was. Yes, right. That's true. But in the larger historical context of downtowns before club kids, you have Warhol, and then you have that sort of that celebutante period out of which Madonna came, right, James? Mm-hmm. Don't you think?
Yeah.
And she successfully took what she needed, took what she wanted, and span it into international gold.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and I think Gaga learned that from her in part, And
so tell us a little bit about your month with Michael Ehrlich. What? Didn't you write about that? Isn't that part of your book?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Yeah.
Well, chapter 3 is devoted to the summer I spent working as his assistant.
How did that come about?
He got out May of 2014, and I had a light teaching load that summer. So it was two things. On one hand, as a sociologist, I was fascinated by what it would be like to watch him reacclimate after 16 plus years in prison, you know, as I say in the book and as other people have said, you know, basic things like forwarding an email or copying, pasting on the computer.
He was a caveman.
Yeah,
Was,
exactly.
like,
Or,
yeah.
right. Or I say in the book, you know, like Katie Heron in Mean Girls, right? She was, you know, homeschooled and grew up in Africa, so she had no sense of the norms of a Midwestern high school. And you kind of see in Mean Girls what it's like for her to understand girl culture in high school. And so it was that kind of sociological curiosity. But then it was also, you know, visiting him 13 times in prison beforehand, before he got out.
So you would say you had a friendship with him, a relationship?
No, I never thought of myself as a friend, because he was just basic things that you would ask a friend. You know, what do your parents do? Are you dating anyone?
I've
He would
always
never
had this
ask
problem
me.
with him.
He doesn't
never
care.
once has he ever asked how you
Right,
are.
exactly.
Like,
He
you
never
call him.
cares.
I agree with that.
But at that point, I really, and I think the people that I went up to see him with, his editor Esther, and I'm used to pounding the lectern in my classes. His editor Esther and Steve Lewis. I think we all really thought that he would take a different path than what he ended up taking.
And but were you able to see that right off the bat that wasn't going to happen?
No. I that's why I stayed working with him. I think well into. I guess I transitioned out maybe September, October after he got out.
Did it? Was it a positive experience? Do you think? Is it something you look back on and think that you learned something from him, or did it end poorly?
Well, this is something that you and I have in common, James. We both spent time working with him, and then wrote a damn book about it, and then came out to LA,
and then fled from one coast to the next.
I think that. I learned a lot going back to what you described as the disease of fame. I think that he squandered an enormous opportunity. How many inmates leave prison and have editors and professors helping him?
So many opportunities.
Rebuild?
Yeah.
If I was the only one that was no longer in contact with him, that'd be one thing. But basically everyone, you know.
Yeah. You talk a lot about. Let's talk a little bit about the club scene now and how you think it is. And I every time I go to New York, I'm always shocked and amazed at how fabulous and how polished and how these kids have met, like Brian Burke and Hannah Keast and Archie Goetz and a lot of these, that kid Sussy. They have taken the lessons of the club kids, and each generation polishes it a little bit, takes it to the next level, and they're better than anything we ever could have imagined back in the 80s or 90s. I truly think so.
James, that's you seem in a very giving mood today.
I'm so generous. I'm such a no, but I do. I love what they've done with. I don't even think they would call themselves club kids, and yet they are. The 10th generation of what we started back in the 80s, and I really, what do you think?
Well, but they all look to your generation as inspiration.
But that's that thing where, we looked to, I've talked about this before, where we look to like the Warhol's factory and thinking, time lends a glamour and a mythology to things that really don't exist. And if we were all to take a time machine back to the factory, we would think, God damn, these people are annoying. And they're all just like these dirty speed freaks and tripping. And like, we wouldn't want to spend time with them, but they have this glamour that just, after 40, 50 years that has gathered around them. And I think that's the same thing with the club kids, because we were all just annoying as fuck, and we were just silly kids in Halloween costumes, But
I think the constant, and I quote you from, I know I interviewed you both for the book, and I'm very grateful for that. I quote one of the things that you said about how much you enjoyed just getting ready.
Oh, well, that is one of the things that we have talked about, where when I look back on all that time, and I think, God, I was just so high, and I was like always tense, and I was, always looking for the next hit and the next, and I never really had a chance to look around and enjoy what was actually happening. But the one thing I do remember is every night getting together with friends, getting the bottle of vodka, getting dressed, putting each other's makeup on, laughing hysterically. Like, if I could go back, that's what I would do. I would just go back to the times when it was just family, and you were just, amusing each other getting dressed.
Right.
That's really sweet.
It is.
That's really kind of touching.
Yeah.
But you're right about sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think it's a completely fascinating book because it combines the sort of sociological perspective you might expect of a professor with a real life immersive experience, because you didn't just write about this from an ivory tower, you went out and lived it. And I think it's such an interesting combination, because most professors don't also live it.
But
right?
is it just an experiment, or do you find yourself, are you a part of downtown now, and is it not a part of you, and you don't want to give it up? Do you still go out and you still have fun?
Oh yeah, no, I still love it. I had a fabulous night in West Hollywood on Friday. Actually with one of the producers of the Glory Days documentary about Michael. It's still fun. The lasers and the dancing and the music and the drama and the drag queens. I love it. I always encourage people who feel like they don't belong to try it. I end the book with a few kind of guidelines for nightlife, and I say, even if you don't feel like you're a looker, even if you don't feel like you're very fashionable, just try it.
Well, that's the beauty of it, is how accepting everybody always is. If you've got a hunchback, throw a little glitter on it.
Exactly.
I've always loved that.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I think a lot of people are intimidated by the idea of New York nightlife until you actually get into it and you see that it is just, it's the island of misfit toys, and it's a bunch of just kids who all find each other.
But there is a sort of entry-level bump, right? You've got to get past the door that first time.
Right.
It isn't exactly come one, come all. I mean, yes, once you're in it is, but it's a little bit, right?
Absolutely. And I start off the book with me before, me before that immersion.
You
just
talk
not
about that
being
first
able to
time
get
at the hotel on the
at the Hudson Hotel.
The Hudson Hotel, and how you had acne and you were in khakis and you sort of...
It was a mess. It was a tragic mess. Because a lot of the book is also about the potential of identity as a malleable thing. Like, you can become something else. And so in grad school, my dissertation was about an organizational labor market, the Army Officer Corps. And so I worked for the Army. I lived in Washington. And I very much look like Gandhi. I just look like a Gandhi in khakis. and that's who I was.
Gandhi aura about you. I see
I have
it.
a little bit of a this is a bit of an homage to Gandhi. And I had my head shaved, and I was very, very bony, and
You're
I had
very saintly.
I don't know about that. I had these very kind of wire frame glasses, and of course, imagine that fool trying to get into a fabulous party called Ladyland at the Hudson Hotel. It was tragic. But I learned, and so some people look at that and they say, well, this is, it's cruel, it's snobbery, it's masochistic. And it's like I tell my students, if they let just anyone into our school, your diplomas wouldn't mean anything.
It's
if
true.
they just let anyone into a club, it would be a shitty party, right? You want someone who will contribute a bit of energy.
So tell us a little bit about how the book has been doing, and you've been going around talking to people and you're doing signings and everything. Tell us a little bit about after writing the book and have your experience as it comes out. Is this your first book? No, this isn't.
Yes, it is.
It is, okay.
Yes. It's been a fun summer. It's been stressful, because you want to get it out there. You want to try to sell it as much as you can. I've had some amazing events. I had one here at Book Soup with the brilliant...
Love Book Soup, fabulous.
Yes, we love Book Soup. They were an amazing venue, and I did the Q&A there with the brilliant and beautiful Parker Day, who photographs, Sussy and some of the club kids that you mentioned, and these amazing portraits that have been featured in places like the New Yorker. The main launch was at Rizzoli in New York with the brilliant and best-selling author Wednesday Martin, who wrote Primates of Park Avenue. And it's fun to see a kind of diverse crowd, people interested, some young people who are kind of very hesitant about how to make their way in, and then others who are just, old habitués and oh, well, you left out this, and what about that?
Well,
so it's been fun.
You aren't writing a yearbook of the club scene, and that's something that I had to explain over and over again when I was doing Party Monster. Was that it was just a snapshot of a moment in time, and a lot of people do get upset because they want it to be a yearbook of in which everybody is included. Tell us a little bit about the research that went into the book and how long it took and everything.
Well, what's interesting is that I would have wanted to include a lot more people. But one of the criticisms that has emerged is that there are too many. So no matter what you do, it's an impossible...
If it's just an onslaught of names and everything like that, it does become a little confusing.
So you've written Nightclubs, a downtown memoir. What are you working on next?
Well, I'm working with some people on adapting it for TV.
As a documentary or as a scripted drama?
As a scripted drama.
Oh, that's fun.
But there's this kind of, we're not sure if it's going to be straight from the book, which I think would be hard given that it is historical.
Right.
Several chapters are historical, or what I think could be a heavily aestheticized version of it that would maybe include more of the current characters on the scene now.
You're also you're at NYU right now, but then you said that you were going to be transferring and you're going to be teaching here. What do you tell us a little bit about that? Can you talk about that?
I hadn't expected to, but sure. That's okay. I'm ready for a change. I'm 35 years old. I have spent 34 of those
years. He can never eat lunch in this town again. He has to leave.
Right? You've been driven out of New York. Is that what the story?
Well, no, I was just going to say I've spent 34 of my 35 years on this planet on the East Coast, and I'd like to try something different. My brother and his wife are out here. Today is really hot, but the weather here I just prefer to New York.
You could never go after you've been here. You can never go back to New York again.
And it took James a long time.
It does.
He
it takes you 3 years.
Bitterly.
They say it takes 3 years before you actually feel like it's home here.
Really?
Because you do feel like you're a transplanted like New Yorker for a long time, but then once all of a sudden one day you'll go back to New York or you'll leave the city and you'll think I need to get back home.
Well,
to
the
LA.
weird thing about New York is it never changes. It's always got that incredible bubbling energy. But it's like running on a treadmill. It's still there, exactly the same as
yes,
when
exactly.
You left, so.
And sometimes I go back to New York, and the first 2 days I'm like, I love this, and then by the third day I'm like, get me out. Yeah.
Okay, so that's Night Class. Victor, stay with us because that is number 7, Night Class, a downtown memoir. James, what is your book report for number 6?
Number 6.
I wanted to talk a little bit about one of my favorite books of all time, the Andy Warhol Diaries. I am somebody who loves reading diaries. If there is like a 16th century Belgian nun and she has diaries, I am reading them. I love it. I love reading letters between people. I love just like that sort of...
It's that first-hand authentic thing,
yeah,
right?
that you're really just noodling around inside their head. I love that. And nobody does diaries better than Andy Warhol.
Do you keep a diary?
I did keep a diary. And
you stopped?
I did. It was from like age 14 to about 30. I kept a diary.
Why'd you stop?
Well, looking back on them now, they are the most embarrassing things ever. All the New York period, the Celebutante period, it's basically just a list of what I wore and who was there, and it's just like Diane and Ida and Joanne and Bobby and Susan, and it's like, who the hell are these people? Like, I have no idea what any of this is. I have no idea what any of the parties were, and it will be like the blue Alfredo Valoria that I was wearing. It's like I don't remember anything. It makes no sense to me going back and reading any of it. But the Warhol ones,
on the other hand,
they were edited by Pat Hackett, and what it was he would call her every morning for his taxes, and he would say, I took a 35-cent cab.
See, it sounds like your diary,
right? And then I went to this party, and it was, we spent $4 on a drink, blah blah blah, like that, and then he would, list everybody who was there. But his life was so insane because he really just, covered the docks, and he was like in every, he was uptown, downtown, Hollywood, intellectual, academic, art crowds, and he knew every single person there, and it really is a record of the mid-century, of the 20th century.
He talks about negotiating with Trump.
Yes, he does. Well,
yes, and of course Trump rips him off.
Yes.
Hello. Doesn't like the
never
color
change.
scheme of the pictures. I mean, that to me is the ultimate crassness. How dare you look at an artist and complain about the color scheme, like that it doesn't go with your wallpaper or something.
Well, there's a famous story about Cornelia Guest and how she painted her walls to match her Warhol.
Well, that's okay, but it's like
but she did get a lot of hell for that.
I think that's fine.
I think it's sort of fabulous
to reject
too.
a Warhol because it doesn't match the drapes. Like, how dare you fool?
Yes. Well, now you both have read it. Tell me a little bit about what you think of the Warhol Diaries.
You know what? I have not read it.
What?
I've dipped into it. To me, it's a little bit like James Joyce's Ulysses. It's almost impenetrable. I mean, I think, but I will sit down one day. I always think I'll sit down one day and read it cover to cover, but I have not done that. And admit, the first time you read it, you must have gone straight to the index to look for your name.
No, there was no index.
Right.
When it first came out, there wasn't an index, and it wasn't until Spy Magazine created the index that everyone suddenly was figuring out who was in it and who was not. And I remember working the door of Red Zone, I believe it was, and Beauregard came barreling down the street to tell me that I was on page 367 and he was on page, and he had a list. He was doing his own index of everybody who was in it, and it was that week that index came out. You were really something if you were mentioned.
And so how did that feel?
What? Well, it was, like I said, Pat was the one who did it, and I have an embarrassing story about Pat where I one time I was drunk and and I went up to her and I was like, "You're Pat Hackett. I'm James St. James. I'm really famous. I was in Newsweek and I blah 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 like that." And I did this whole really embarrassing spiel for her, this little tap dance, and I think she didn't like me that much ever after that, and so I think that's why I wasn't in as much as I was. I think there probably would have been a lot more in there, but I think Pat edited me out. We might have to cut that in case Pat is lit today.
Best bit that she's not in the Warhol Diaries.
Anyway, so that's mine. Fenton, what is your book?
Number 5. Well, okay, so that's number 6, Anti-Warhol Diaries by Andy Warhol, edited by Pat Hackett. I mean, it's a bestseller, isn't it? I mean, it's
really
a legendary tome.
Number 5.
Number 5. Okay, so number 5, I picked this kind of amazing book that was slightly kind of a bit off more. You know, when you start to read a book, everyone's raved about a book, and you start to read it, they go, "Oh, this is really good," and then you're like, but you're
afraid to tell anyone to tell.
You're ashamed to put it down, and you just slog on to the end, which I did. Anyway, it's Sapiens by Yuval Noel Harari.
I don't know anything about this.
It's a brief history of humankind.
Oh.
So it's very easy to summarize. No, it is. It's like a complete history of humankind, and everybody says it's the most brilliant book ever. The one thing that really struck me about the whole book is the sort of argument that comes quite early on, which is that really everything around us, what separates humankind from everybody else is our ability to make up stories. And he really expands on this idea that stories, which are fictions, inform everything, and that in fact the only reason we have survived as let alone a downtown society, as a species, is because we've been able to make up fictions, number one, and then number two, get everybody to believe in them. And on that basis, you have society, civilization, the kind of cooperation that is needed for humankind to become the number one species on the planet. And it's kind of an interesting idea. So he's sort of saying ultimately, the only reason we're here today is by virtue of our ability to tell stories. And then he goes on to talk about, you start thinking about these things, there's so many things we take for granted, like, democracy, politics, government, religion. To some extent, we all believe these things are real. And his point is, no. They're all complete and utter currency, money.
Right.
They're all complete and utter fabrications.
And it's just that we've all put our faith into these things that are just constructs.
It's all made up.
Right.
And that's the only reason society and civilization works.
Well, storytelling,
which is a mind-blowing idea. I still don't think I have my head around it. But
well, it sounds like a fascinating book. But I mean, storytelling is all about the production of memory, and that's still something that we're really fighting about today with the statues. What do these Confederate monuments mean about our own memory as a country? What we choose to commemorate and what we choose to hold on to.
That's true.
But ultimately, these stories are just allegories and metaphors and everything that are based on truth, right? I mean,
well, no, he's saying they're not based on truth.
Oh.
That's exactly. I mean, he's not saying they're a lie. He says here, an imagined reality is not a lie. I lie when I say that there is a lion near the river, when I know perfectly well there is no lion there. Unlike lying, an imagined reality is something that everyone believes in, and as long as this communal belief persists, the imagined reality exerts force in the world.
Well, that's like Trump.
Yes, kind of. I mean, it's a little frightening, really.
Yeah.
And who is he? What's his name? Tell me everything.
Yeah, I know. I don't know anything about him. He's Yuval Noel Harari, and he's also written a sequel book, which is actually really quite scary because it's called. I just have to let me find the title of the book, because the sequel book, he posits the idea that just because we've existed this far doesn't mean, in fact, we're going to continue to exist. The sequel book is called...
Or that we ought to, yeah.
It's called Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. And his argument in that is that, in fact, we're probably going to become cyborgs, or that we will replace ourselves with
Or the machines will take over.
Version. Yeah. And he's
phase
saying,
us out.
What's so bad about that?
Well, it's just the primacy of the...
evolution, right?
Whoever the strongest survives.
Right.
And we will not be the strongest.
Or the smartest. So we have to take a quick break. Thank you, Victor, for being with us.
Thank you so much for
Congratulations.
having
I think
me.
anyone who writes a book is a god in James.
Yes.
Victor, you are both gods. But this is the WOW Report, special edition, the book report, things that make us go,
Wow.
it's the WOW Report on Radio Andy, Sirius XM.
You're listening to World of Wonders WOW Report.
So we're back. You're listening to the WOW Report on Radio Andy, Sirius XM. And you know, every week I'm here with James St. James.
Hello.
Hello, darling. And Blake.
Hi, guys.
Tom is away on a top secret mission, but every week we count down the top 10 things that make us go,
Wow!
This week, though, because it's the end of summer, you know, we've done our reading over the summer. It's back to school. So we're doing a book report. We're doing the top 10 books that make us go,
Wow.
And you, my friend,
Yes.
Josh Sabarra,
Yes.
you are number
4.
Number 4.
I do want to say
Yeah.
that Josh is a PR expert. He's a whiz kid who's
marketing
been around, who knows
genius.
his Hollywood lore
Yes.
inside
Yes.
and out. His first book was Porn Again, which
Yes.
was a memoir.
Yes.
And this is your first dip into fiction.
Right.
And it's sort of a Ramona Clef type situation.
Yeah, I mean,
where
we
these are
call
people
it-
that you know.
Yeah, I mean, of course not.
That's a wink, by the
yeah.
way, for those listening on the radio.
You know, it's all fiction, James. But yes, so this was the fiction writing was a departure, a great departure from the memoirs.
How in your twisted mind did you come up with such deliciously evil characters? I mean, I was like turning the pages in horror. There's this lovely Marcy is this lovely innocent
I am
character.
Marcy. I am also Rhonda. I'm also Marcy's mother.
Right.
I'm a little bit of both.
Right.
But Marcy's boss, oh my God,
Phyllis.
because Marcy works in the publicity department of a movie studio.
Yes.
Something about which you know a little, right?
Yes. She
Then,
she didn't make it up quite as high level as I did. But
even
she's-
after her promotion, she wasn't.
Even after her promotion, she was still, you know, a little bit, you know, in the middle there, stuck in the middle there. But yeah, I mean, the boss that she has is a composite of a number of people I worked with.
Yes.
And I would say that I was kind to them.
Oh my
No.
gosh.
Oh, wow.
You held back. Oh my God. I mean, one of my favorite bits early on is the villainess of the book,
Yes.
Claire.
Who is the wife
arrives,
of a
super
movie star,
duper movie
superstar.
star.
Yes.
She arrives for a meeting and she like there's a huge buffet, as I suppose there is for fabulous people, and of course she's like, I can't eat any of that, it's not in my diet. She says, I'll just have water. And then she's like, she wants to know if the ice cubes in the glass of water are also Evian, because she makes the very good point.
Right.
What is the point of having Evian with ice if the ice cubes are just
tap water.
Yeah,
It
right.
melts into it, and then you have a half a glass
then,
of tap.
then it's really just from
Has
the
that
tap.
really happened? You really
yes.
know people
Yes.
like that?
Yes.
That is
And you
so,
know what's
I'm going to
funny?
start doing that.
But you've seen those displays of food. Like you go into a meeting
Yeah.
at CAA, right? And there's always sandwiches.
Unfortunately, well, when I
they
go
don't
to
lay it
CAA, the food is still there, but it's from another
From
meeting.
the last meeting.
Leftovers. And they're like hurriedly moving, get away. You know,
It's
get rid of
from-
the
it's
food.
from
As you're trying to shove as much in your face as you
And
can.
the coffee is always lukewarm. I'm like, what? You know?
Yeah, that's because it's from Reese Witherspoon's
Yeah.
meeting before you.
Exactly. Just like sloppy seconds.
Yeah, Lady Gaga got the good sandwiches, and you know, you're you know.
Yeah. Well, no, I know. I know what I am.
It puts you in your place for sure. But no, I mean, you've seen those meetings. You go into the meetings and there are these, you know, displays of food, and, you know, everybody has his or her dietary concerns, not just in LA, but everywhere. It just seems to be magnified.
I was
going
to say a little more so here sometimes.
Exactly.
Right.
I do want to point out that some of the reviews for this book have been saying that that Josh Sabarra's fictional debut is a fizzy cocktail of inside Hollywood gossip, biting, laugh-out-loud humor, and supremely likable heroines. Enemies Closer is twisty, delightful page-turner of a novel. With the pitch-perfect eye of a true insider, Josh Sabarra skewers the Hollywood machine. It is a rollicking good time. It's a fun book to read. Tell me a little bit about writing it, because I know that when I've tried to go from a first-person narrative to a third-person, I lose so much, and yet you seem to have sort of gathered steam with this, and you do a really good job of it.
James,
Tell me about the writing.
I mean, James, you could write as a teenage girl. I know you could.
but it's always me when I'm writing, and it's hard for me to do other people's perspectives.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was a challenge, like to sit down, first of all, to figure out what perspective you're going to tell the book from. And two, to keep the correct perspective throughout the whole novel.
No, I know.
You know, because some writers, I think particularly new writers, have a tendency to what I call head hop, which is jumping into the minds of other characters and telling things that, if it's told from one person's perspective, that person couldn't possibly know that.
Exactly.
And, you know, there are a lot of pitfalls you can fall into there. So you have to be very careful with things like, you know, she noticed that James was angry. She could only say James looked angry.
Right.
Or she got the feeling that James was angry. Or
you know me too well.
Or
honey, you know when he's angry. I can tell you. It happened on this show just in the last segment. James was furious.
But you know, you have to be really diligent about that if the book's going to work, you know, in its entirety.
Oh, I didn't know. Never struck me. Is that what Jane Austen does? She sticks to the point of view?
Well, it's like what we were talking about with Curious Incident of the Dog of the Night, where it was told from the point of view of an autistic boy, and so he couldn't possibly pick up the clues that the reader himself was picking up, but the narrator didn't know. And sort of sometimes when you're writing, it's that same sort of thing where the narrator can't possibly understand what is going on.
So you just have to be really careful, and sometimes,
especially someone like Marcy, who is not of that world, that she's not learning, you know, she doesn't really know all of these things.
Right, so she's sort of an observer.
Right.
And so to communicate, you know, I had to be really creative with the dialogue of the other characters.
They're so evil.
But to get across, but also they're human. I mean, there's a motivation for each one. I mean, you know a backstory about each one of them and why these horrible people behave the way they do.
James is just staring out of the window here on
there
our Hollywood studio.
cute?
A
shirtless cute boy.
Yes.
Honestly, James, really.
That's why you have my back to the window, I think.
I want to read what Gigi Levangie Grazer, herself a brilliant writer, best-selling author of Man-Eater and The Starter Wife, wrote. So I
she
feel
has
these
a new book. So, I mean, I don't know when it's coming out, but she has a juicy new novel.
What's it called?
Yes.
Well, okay, so she wrote this. The Devil Wears Prada meets Bridget Jones's Diary with a sinister Hollywood twist. Isn't that great? I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, she's a friend, so she's biased, but who cares? She's a brilliant writer.
But but I will say she won't give a blurb or put her name on something that she doesn't. Like I always say to anybody I know who gets the book, I always say to them, if it's not something that you have to really believe what you're saying. Otherwise, I'd rather not have your...
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I was just talking to you upstairs, and I was saying about with Porn Again, how absolutely amazing you are at the PR end of it.
Yes.
And I was saying that
you single-handedly turned it into a bestseller. You don't stop. I'm too sensitive. I'd be like...
there is not a truck stop, a rest stop from here to Iowa that you have not hit.
I haven't been in a truck stop.
There's signs
close.
Everywhere I go, no matter what I'm doing, I turn every house I go into, everywhere I go.
What lessons can James learn from this? Tell him.
Well, I mean, he doesn't need lessons. He's a best-selling author himself. but more than one time over, I believe.
But the interesting thing is, like I was saying to you, that basically there's a 2 or 3 month window of opportunity to sell a book.
Yeah, the lifespan of a book's about 12 weeks.
Yeah, because then the bookstores start turning over for new.
Right.
But Born Again, I tell you, it's
It
like
just keeps going.
Yeah,
I know.
You know the trick that if you sign a book, then they can't return it to the.
Well, that's not
Or is that
necessarily
not
true. I believe that they can, if it's not personalized, I believe it can still be returned to a distributor. I love the idea of that.
Because I do see signed copies wherever I go, and you do sneak in wherever you go. You sneak in and sign copies.
Whenever I'm in a particular city or somewhere that carries the book, I do make an effort to do that because it really does. It really does call people's attention to the book.
And they are more likely to put it on display.
To put it on display, exactly.
Do you have to ask permission, or can you just go in and start signing?
Usually, if you just say, I just say, hey, is it okay if I sign, the copies of my book that you have in the store? But, you have to be, like you said, the lifespan is short. So if you're going to keep a book going, you have to be really diligent about keeping it out there. And I know that I, hammer it home on social media as well.
Yes.
But the minute that you drop that a little, I've seen the sales drop a little. So, whatever it is works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that Born Again has, originally what started as what people thought was like a really niche book, really got a much bigger life than it would have had otherwise.
Well, it benefited from its fabulous cover and its fabulous title, which looks so good on a coffee table.
Well, I have to say, actually, I think it's a fantastic title, but I was surprised in the sense that I have found in my experience words like hardcore and porn and sex always like freak out. It's a problem word.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And by the way, it was not. It was a balance because I had to think to myself, like, I knew there would be some things that would be limiting about the title.
Right.
But the positives to it far outweighed what the negatives were.
It sticks. It's
but
sticky.
there are
It's
people.
sticky.
Yes, it is.
But there are people who won't have you on. Like
Yeah.
I've had shows that one in particular that would not have me on to discuss Enemies Closer because they were concerned about audiences then going and looking at Porn Again. Frankly, I think that's ridiculous
It's
because
pathetic.
I think the story of Porn Again, it's a tricky marketing title. It's fun, and the book I think has a lot to say, and it's a shame that particular outlet wouldn't give a platform to it.
I love the look. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say this has a really fabulous this has a really fabulous cover as well. It looks like the New York Post. It's it's cute. It's fun. Tell me a little bit about the marketing of this book.
Yeah, it was supposed to recall because the character Marcy gets caught up in some tabloid scandal, so to speak, and so the idea was to sort of recall sort of those New York newspapers,
It looks page 6, right?
Yeah.
It feels page 6. Can we say that?
Page 6.
So
It's close, but slightly different. Right?
no, it's different. It is different, but it is
Just different
But
enough,
the
right?
idea is to recall,
Tabloid headlines.
tabloid headline, and
Hard copy.
Exactly.
Exactly. Hard copy. Title for a book.
At least the copy's hard, right?
Was it hard to write? I get the impression it just felt like a roller coaster ride. Once you started, you were just off like a rocket ship. Like, was it like that to write it?
How long did it take? What was the?
It took about a year to write, and then I would say 4 months of editing. I don't know what your editing process is like.
It was actually with Freak Show. It took me a year, and then it was a year between the process of when I sent the final copy in to when it came out. So there was a good.
I do a lot of. I work very closely with my editor and do a lot of editing as I go, chapter by chapter. So by the time it's strung together, it's in pretty good shape.
Right.
And then the polishes come and the connective tissue between chapters and things like that. But I feel really good knowing that a chapter's sort of in the can.
Right.
Sometimes you have to change things a little bit because you'll come up with a different point or a little twist that you may not have thought of. For the most part, I outline. So I basically know where I'm going and I know what I need to cover.
Oh, I'm a fiend for outlining. Yes.
Yeah, it's important. Some writers don't do that, and they say they're happier just sitting in front of a computer and going with it.
Splurging,
Well,
yeah.
I always I remember you were shocked the first couple of times you saw this, how I write out of order. I have a huge timeline and then outlines, and I just every day will go and do the third chapter and then the 10th chapter and then the first chapter, and then I sort of put it all together and toss it in the air and hope that it all works
See,
out.
I'd have a hard time doing that with fiction. Porn Again, I wrote totally out of order, and I knew what subjects had to be covered, and I would say, I don't feel like
That's
writing
exactly-
this one
yes,
today, but I'll
uh-huh.
do this one today. And of course, the ones that you least want to write are all at the end.
mhm.
But for this, I felt like it was important. I had to go
the
in order
tonally
to
to
keep
keep-
my.
But here's the thing, you've got the outline. Don't you find that you just get into a groove and you veer off and you're like, I got to do this. This is a new idea. And you don't do that?
Yeah,
Like-
but I know what the story has to be, so I know what the
Right.
bones
So you
look
can
like.
die-
at this
right.
point, this point,
So-
this point. But then
whatever-
places in between
exactly,
can
like-
be whatever you want.
Right.
It was so packed with amazing LA Hollywood. One of my favorites is Marcy's mom.
Rhonda.
Rhonda.
Yes, she calls her. Marcy calls her up, and she's reorganizing her earthquake pantry.
Yes.
It's so L.A. And then, can we talk about the Madonna and Gaga moment, because that had me just howling. So can you tell a story?
There's a scene where one of her, so the basic premise is that Marcy is a 40-something-year-old studio publicist who is working on a movie, and she gets sort of ensnared in this group of women who, all have different motivations for wanting to have a friendship with Marcy. And one of these friends stops by. Her husband happens to run the studio that Marcy works for, and stops by to say hello to Marcy. And she gets a text and instantly has to leave because she says that Madonna and Lady Gaga have gotten into a huge fight, which is obvious for a studio head's wife would know that, and that it's really bad and there's blood.
Right.
And so Marcy can't believe that she's hearing this and that this woman is saying it in front of her. And she said, as a PR person, shouldn't she be using some discretion, just to put it out there? And of course, it turns out that Jill, this character, is really just talking about her dogs, Gaga and Madonna. And
what kind of dog are they?
they were, what were they? Miniature pinchers.
Right,
I think I made them.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And
rarefied Hollywood fluff thing.
Yeah,
with
and
legs.
the funny part is that of course Jill, this character who's such a nasty witch, makes Marcy feel stupid for not knowing.
Yes. They're
the-
all nasty. I mean, Marcy's lovely, although it is revealed capable of standing up for herself. Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a great twist and a great ending, but they are such evil bitches. It's like
It's Hollywood, and there we have
Right.
all run into these people.
We
do know them.
Yeah.
When you swim with sharks,
Yeah, no, I mean
Right.
the thing is, it's like the sad
Piranhas.
part of that is that it's not. I mean, this is sort of
It's
a
not
fun,
made up,
this
right?
is
It's
a-
all true.
This is a fun take on it, but yes, I mean, welcome to surviving.
Welcome to the
LA.
jungle.
Yeah.
Welcome to the
Jungle
jungle.
Red.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Enemies Closer. It's
Yes.
out on JBS Books, published by JBS Books. Fine bookstores everywhere. Probably signed already by Josh.
No, there are none signed yet. People have to come to the events.
But you are having an event. It comes out September 12th.
September
right.
12th,
And
yeah.
this podcast, this radio show will be out by then, probably, right? I think so.
Probably.
And then you'll be.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I'm doing a book tour. So
You're
I'll
going to be
yeah.
in New York, LA, where Miami.
I'm doing Barnes & Noble The Grove.
Okay.
And then on the 13th of September, then Barnes & Noble Union Square on the 18th, just following DragCon New York. Is that right?
It is
Yes.
indeedy.
I mean, it's a hard thing to follow, but I'll try. And then I'm going to West Palm Beach, Florida.
Fun.
Yes. So,
Will you see Roxanne Pulitzer?
you know what? I haven't seen her since that Playboy spread in
Love
1984.
Roxanne. Oh my God, we should have
The
her
sex
on.
with the trumpet.
Yes, oh my God, I slept with the trumpet was the big headline.
That was the best. Palm Beach lore.
I'm so glad you know that. That's my favorite.
Are you kidding? Any scandal? And then I'll be back here. I'm doing Huntington Beach. I'm doing an event with Fred Siegel in November. So I'll be around.
You'll be around. Good.
Yeah. So there's no excuse for anybody listening to not find enemies.
And we'll
Closer.
post those dates on the WOW Report.
Yes, definitely.
What is it? worldofwonder.net/Radio Andy.
That's it.
Yes. And also, I'm looking forward to seeing both books, Porn Again and Enemies Closer, as movies.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
Well, you know what? There
They're
was
so
interest
visual.
in Porn Again, and everybody just got busy, and I don't know that we ever finished like fleshing it out. I feel like with Enemies is like ripe for something, and especially I think there's so much work for actresses who are underserved in the industry right now. You know, I can see, you know, in my head, like I picture Celia Ward and Katie Seagal and Christine Lottie and like that, like as those women, and I feel like it's such meaty parts for them.
Well, you know, that makes me also say there's got to be a sequel, because I've got to know what happens to Claire after this whole thing.
Hopefully she gets what's coming. Well, she got what's
she
coming
kind of
to her,
gets what's coming to her, but then, you know, one lives on,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
so she's not hanging by the end of a rope, because it's rare that you
Perils
find
of Pauline.
such a deliciously awful, evil bitch character as Claire.
That's funny. I see
Yeah.
you're sort of you're identifying a little with Claire.
I know where you're going with this, James. Hey, James. We're going to move on to number 3, James. What do we got for number 3? And stick around, James, and
Yes, no,
chime
I'd
in.
love to.
Number 3.
Number 3 is a coffee table book that is one of my all-time favorites that I've ever gotten. It's called Advanced Style by Ari Seth Cohen. Do you know about these books?
I do.
I do
Yes.
not.
Yeah, it started off as a blog a few years ago, and it's Ari Seth Cohen, who is a photographer, and he roams through. It never really works on
So
radio.
it's not a book, it's a picture book?
It's a picture book.
Oh,
It's a-
Jay.
But no, but it's really...
This is about reading.
No, wait, no, but this is really this is fantastic. And I have to, tell everybody to read. It's he's a photographer who roams around the Upper West Side, and he just
It's those
photographs
pictures.
all these women, all these
Wow.
really fabulous older women,
Like with amazing, like
with
with
amazing
clothes.
style.
Yes.
What
And-
page are you on?
with 4, but there's just all these really, and it has
yeah.
their little biographies, and there have been a number of these books out
Yeah.
now, and there was a Netflix documentary about these different women, and they're all of a certain generation in which you might not have a lot, but what you do have is you have one nice set of pearls and one nice Chanel jacket. You do your
Right.
hair every single day when you put your makeup on at 7 o'clock in the morning without fail, and it's just really fantastic, and it's very sort of empowering, and it's very it's energizing to look to see that just because I'm 51 doesn't mean that it's all over style wise for me.
Of course not. And in fact, I mean, I really do see you in those pages.
I do.
With the statement jewelry, right? Like big
yes.
sort of.
But it's like very like the people who like
Like
the.
in their little Comme des Garçons, they're all.
But it's like the Iris Apfels of
Yes.
the world. You
Yes,
know what I
Yeah.
mean?
they're all,
Yeah.
just absolutely fantastic women. I find such inspiration in these books. There's 3 of them, I believe. And I mean, that could be me.
Oh my God! Those are those sunglasses?
Yes,
who makes those
I don't know,
sunglasses?
but they're crosses. They're just,
Uh-huh.
and that could be me. That's totally me.
It totally is.
Bit more hair.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out that this is a sort of a fun little book. It's a great stocking stuffer, a great hostess gift.
How big are your stockings? It's a coffee.
Oh, they're very big. But anyway, and so that was just a short little one that I wanted to.
Very short. Okay, well, that's Advanced Style by Ari Seth Cohen, published by what is that? PH? Is it
Powerhouse, isn't it?
Powerhouse.
Yes.
Yeah, they do so many great coffee table photography books.
And there's a whole series of them.
Number 2.
For number 2, I picked I'll Take Manhattan by Judith Krantz. I mean, in the 80s, I went through a phase where I was just addicted to these sex and shopping. They were called bunkbusters.
The Jackie Collins.
The Jackie
Judith
Collins,
Krantz,
yes.
The, Danielle Steele.
Shirley Conran.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
just amazing.
Yes.
And to me, the text, even though it wasn't the first by any means, the ultimate text in this genre in the 80s was I'll Take Manhattan by Judith Krantz. It tells a story of Maxie Amberville, who's a young gadabout, and she decides to I can only dimly remember the plot because really, frankly, that's not what these things are necessarily about. But essentially, she is the heiress to a publishing empire. So Condé Nast, right? And it's being taken over. It was the era of hostile takeovers, Kohlberg, Kravis, and some other KKK or whatever they were. And she is fighting this hostile takeover, and she takes a magazine title. I remember this, Buttons and Bows.
Yes!
Which is this old fusty sort of McCall's type.
1940s era. Yes.
And she, Tina Brown-esque, reuses it and turns it into the most fabulous, she calls it B&B, and turns it into this like must-have glossy magazine. And really it is a sort of unofficial biography of that era of the glossy magazine, the roaring 80s, hostile takeovers. How do we?
Well, I do want to say that Judith Krantz, before that, had done Scruples and Princess Daisy.
Right.
Scruples.
Oh.
It was. I remember in like 7th grade taking my mother's copy with dog-eared, like all the sex.
I even remember the
scenes.
cover, like with the
Yes,
cap, with the netted
with the
red lips. Yes.
And you would take
Yes.
and it had sex scenes in it. It had gay sex scenes in it, and you would pass it around class, and you would get in trouble with the teacher for having it. Princess Daisy was one of the first ones that I ever saw with, like I said, with gay sex in it. Young Rupert Everett was the character in the miniseries.
Yes,
Lindsay
yes.
Wagner
I remember
was the character
it was
in
TV,
the miniseries for Scruples, and then I'll Take Manhattan. So what those were to the 70s, I'll Take Manhattan was to the 80s, and they're just it's like for a young child roiling with hormones and stuff. You would read these, and you would just be blown away.
Tell me,
you
you
remember-
didn't jerk off to them, did you?
All over the house.
Those pages were stuck together. I have a question though. Do you remember? Okay, so Iris Rainer Dart, who wrote Beaches.
Oh yeah.
She had a book before Beaches called The Boys in the Mailroom.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever get?
I did.
Which
read
is
that one.
along those lines, only movie studio-ish
Right.
instead of magazine-ish. And that had like the gay character. It was like very at the time, very
Just
still one of my
shocking.
favorite books. Props to Iris Rainer.
Do you see yourself in the tradition of the blockbuster? I mean, it's a recognized literary genre, I feel. I mean, I feel it gets scant respect, but I do feel there are incredible books written
There's a
in
lot
this.
of money to be made in it.
Yes.
There's a lot of you can do a lot of within
Do
television.
you see yourself
with
in
the-
that tradition?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's just like unadulterated entertainment.
Yes.
I mean, that's what it is. It's like the idea is like somebody asked me, what do I want people to leave enemies closer with? And I'm like, I want them to feel like they made a friend with an interesting character and that they were entertained. Like that's it. My goal. I don't write literary fiction. I don't plan to write literary fiction.
I think you're too modest because I think it has real qualities. Like, I think it's too bad that we put this in a. I mean, it's entertaining, and then it's also profound. I mean,
I
it's
do
really.
think it has those things in it, but I'm just saying, like, I'm not going to be writing, the Poisonwood Bible.
There's no Civil War.
There's no historical, but. My goal is to write good quality fiction that's also entertaining and that's accessible and relatable and that really has people who you can, that you can find yourself in those pages. I mean, the character in this book is not, a size 2. She's a size 18 or a size 16.
Oh, you will love it because all the desserts.
No, I know.
And you know what?
know.
And she doesn't lose weight.
Right.
And
That's
that was
true.
very
That's
important
good.
to me.
Right.
Like
Well,
her
I do-
idea was being healthy, not being thin.
I think that you worked at Hallmark. I think that you have.
No, I didn't work at Hallmark. I produced some
you
movies
produced-
for them. Yeah.
But you have sort of.
I think I'd be a little edgy for working at Hallmark.
No, but there's no condescending to that market. There is no.
No.
It's like the Lifetime, the Hallmark. You know those
Yeah,
people,
absolutely,
and
and
you
love
those
them.
people.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly, and that comes through in the book. With that is your audience, and that it is a complete family.
And that's how I
that.
feel about things like Judith Krantz,
Yeah,
like those books where they're sort of like these beloved.
Yes.
I mean, I don't even like to say throwbacks because I feel like they're really not any less relevant, to be
No,
honest.
no,
I
not
mean,
at
yeah,
all.
times have changed a little, but the themes haven't.
Well, it's interesting with I'll Take Manhattan because I think at the time I felt I was reading something that was completely on point about the period in which we were living. And yet, 30 years later, I feel it ends up being a marvelous sort of historical.
Well,
I mean, it's the
like
in
Peyton
cold
Place
blood of
or
its kind.
Peyton
Exactly.
Place, another
And
Right?
anyone of, like even
I'm
the Love
Trollope.
Machine.
It's
and those
Trollope.
types of-
Yes.
those
To me, it's like Trollope. It's like Jane Austen. They
exactly.
really. I would put it on the shelf with those books. It's really great. I have a fantasy of writing a bonkbuster. I have the title. I've had it for years.
What is it?
I just haven't been able to. It's called Money, Success, Fame, Glamour. Don't you see the cover? I got money, success, fame, glamour. I mean, that is
MSFG.
that
And
MSFG.
that's
What
the
a
hashtag
fucking
right
amazing
there.
title,
Yeah.
right? You'll
Yeah.
have to help market it and design it.
You
Maybe
know
you
I'm
could
always
write
in
it
your
and
corner.
just put my name on it. That would be great, and you can edit it.
Sounds like a plan.
I'll take all the money.
Conceived by Fenton Bailey, but done by everyone else.
Actual work done by other people. Just
Ghost
swishing
written
about.
by.
Okay, we have to take a quick break. Josh, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Good luck
Thanks
with
for having
Enemies
me.
Close. I think
Thank you.
It's going to storm the bestseller charts.
Let's
I
hope so. From your mouth to God's ears.
Yes. And we'll be back with more books on the book report edition of the Wow Report here on Radio Andy, SiriusXM.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. Summer is over. I hope you've been reading over the summer because we are doing our kind of back to school book report, right, James?
Yes. It's back to school book reviews.
Yes, top 10 books that make us go.
Wow!
Tom Campbell is away on a secret mission, but instead, at number 1, very excited to welcome Abdi Nazemian.
Number 1.
Hello.
And Abdi is the author of The Authentics, which is published by HarperCollins, correct?
That's right. Yes, by an imprint called Balzer and Bray at HarperCollins.
Tell us a little bit about the book. Tell us how you wrote it and what it's about.
The book is a young adult novel, and it tells the coming-of-age story of a 15-year-old Iranian-American girl named Daria, who is very, very proud of her ethnicity, very kind of self-identified as Iranian. And she and her friends call themselves the Authentics, which is where the title comes from, because they think they're the only kids who are real at their school. And Daria's childhood best friend, Heidi Javadi, who's also an
What are the
Iranian
nose
girl.
jobs?
That's right. So Daria kind of refers to the other Iranian or Persian girls in the school as the nose jobs, because she feels like they're so fake and they all get these nose jobs. And so it's very much a book about identity and how we define it. And then what happens to Daria in the course of the book is she discovers that there's actually a big secret to her identity and that she may not be ethnically Iranian at all. And from there comes this kind of exploration of what makes us who we are, what is authenticity, and how we define ourselves.
Because at the outset, I think it was feeling very strongly that this is going to be a book about authenticity versus the inauthenticity of the nose job and that whole sort of Beverly Hills artificial mentality,
Right.
because her mother sort of also embodies these characteristics.
Yes.
But actually, what's so brilliant about the book is it turns. Things are not as they seem. And so all those judgments one tends to rush to make about where the moral line is actually
Right.
gets kind of fucked with. And I think it's just it's delicious and funny and very moving, the way the ground shifts under everybody's feet.
Well, it's interesting because it's that thing where no matter where you are, no matter what subculture you belong to, whatever it is, your teenage years are always going to be fucked.
Right.
You're always,
It's that Philip Larkin
yes.
thing, right? Your parents fuck you up. Is that right?
Exactly.
Is that the quote? Yeah.
And there's a Mean Girls in
Yeah.
every high school.
That's right.
And you wrote this from the point of view of a teenage girl. Tell me a little bit
Yes.
about channeling, what the challenges were about channeling a 2017 Iranian girl in Beverly Hills.
Was it a challenge?
I think the sad thing is that it would be more challenging to write almost any other demographic. I think I actually am a teenage girl. It's I don't know what it says about me, but I really do. I mean, I still kind of listen to a lot of the music that teenage girls listen to and
Sure.
consume a lot of the same media. Of course, I understand I am not really a teenage girl and I'm coming at it from a very different perspective. But no, I mean, I think that it came very naturally to me. I of course showed it to many people who were kind of the younger generation, also to a lot of women, to make sure that I was being authentic in the representation. But actually, I think a lot of it is because when I was growing up and I knew I was gay, I didn't have a lot of male stories to identify with because there were very few queer stories. So I identified with women in books and movies and music.
Sure.
And so I think, many of the gay men of our generation, I think, look to female narratives to find ourselves. And so it's pretty natural for me to write from the point of view of women.
Huh.
It's kind of how I prefer to go into it.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's
The
I
book is
know.
hilariously funny. I mean, there are so many good moments. I don't want to like give anything away, but there's so many good moments. But her mom, Sheila, is this sort of just
Love Sheila.
yes, definitely a person after your own heart and mine too. Sort of a little bit uptown, right? Chanel suits. I mean, the Chanel bag is the ultimate thing.
Yes, Chanel bags play a very big part in this book. It's kind of a rite of passage
Right.
in the Iranian Persian
I'm
community
still waiting
to
for my Chanel
to give your
purse.
daughter her first Chanel purse. Yeah.
Right. Well, so they're talking about. I'm just going to read this a little bit. I guess they're talking about performance art. Anyway, do you know what it is? Of course I do, Sheila said. I once saw a wonderful performance artist in Paris. She force-fed herself until she vomited. It was very disturbing, but strangely compelling as well. I was sitting next to Catherine Deneuve, who said she thought it was a statement about foie gras. Isn't that fabulous? That is just fabulous.
It's so fabulous when you read it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, but then it's also very moving. You know that I found. I'm a dad, and I have adopted kids, and I think the whole story around adoption is very moving, and because her brother has. Children by surrogate, and so it's
Yes.
all this sort of modern expansion of what we consider family
Right.
to be, and the ways in which children are had
Yeah.
is so different and varied. And I just thought you dealt with it so movingly, and especially talking about the surrogate mom who,
Right.
well, the mum is the wrong word, the surrogate who carries the baby,
Yeah.
and her. You can't carry a baby with. Well, I don't know. Maybe you can, but after 9 months, you give birth to the baby, and then you
give it
up.
away.
And
Yeah.
it's that whole push-pull thing of you want her to feel bonded, but at the same time, it's not her baby. At the same time, there's
Right.
natural. It's just
It's
very
yeah,
complex.
and I guess this would be a
right?
very good time to say that I myself have twins who are 5.5, and I had them with a surrogate,
Right.
and so the character of Daria's brother, who's gay and who's in the process of having a baby with a surrogate, is obviously a version of myself, I suppose, and so I had an incredible surrogate who was so emotionally connected to the process, and
Wow.
I still communicate with, but I do remember that moment of
Is she still a part? She's not a
She-
part of the children's life? or-
she lives a few hours away. We text pictures, and sometimes she'll come and visit, or she came to their birthday party. But I wouldn't say she comes all the time. But I do
Right.
remember that moment of she was so attached to the process, and of detaching was so important.
Yeah.
And I actually had asked her if she was willing to pump breast milk for us, and she had said no, because I really just feel
That
like
would
I
be
need
too
to
much.
emotionally
Yeah.
detach, and I kind of understood that. And so I think in the book I wanted to depict that process, because the book so much is about what makes a family and how Daria thinks
Yes.
she's from this one type of family and isn't. And I think, honestly, a lot of the inspiration for the book was probably having kids myself and thinking, someday, and I guess that day is now, they are going to start asking many, many questions,
Yes.
and I've never hid anything from them. I mean, from before they could even understand, language, I was talking to them about surrogacy and there are no secrets, but kids have questions, and so I wanted this book to kind of be a real celebration of
It
the
is.
many ways that families can be created.
It really is, and I was just weeping,
Oh,
like weeping.
good.
And then also
I
her
love
brother, who's gay. I just thought it's just so beautifully handled. But and actually, this really did touch me, because coming out and families. I mean, it's not that it can be a very traumatic, unhappy process. And what I thought was so lovely was that the brother, his parents aren't thrilled that he's gay, and in fact, and you're right. A lot of my American friends thought I should stop speaking to them, cut them out of my life entirely, but I could never do that. I forgave them by accepting their limitations and by understanding the time and culture they were raised in.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
eventually they came around and accepted me. I mean,
Yeah,
wow. Sorry, it just gets
that's
to
me right
because
there.
it's-
Yeah.
well, yeah.
That's
I'm
all of
actually
our
so
stories.
Happy. Yeah, I'm so happy you pulled that out, because I'm very passionate about this subject. It did take me a long time to come out to my family,
Yeah.
and I know it takes many, many children from other cultures a long time. And I think sometimes kind of mainstream gay culture, which is largely white, largely raised in this country, not first generation immigrant, forgets that other cultures aren't
quite
as progressive and quite as far along. And we say, oh, like, we're kind of past that now, or I've heard so many people say, like, yeah, we're post-gay, or aren't we past coming out stories? And it's like, maybe you are, but the Iranian kid isn't. And I know that for I had so many friends who did tell me to take harder lines, or even other, like, I remember being at a documentary at Outfest at this gay film festival about a kid whose parents didn't accept him, and people were hissing at the parents every time they were on screen. And all I wanted to do was get up there and say, maybe you could have a little empathy. Like, they're not there yet.
Yeah,
like,
that was a different generation, a different time.
And it's not to excuse homophobia. It's not that. But it's to say, how do you break down those walls? And breaking them down through empathy and acceptance is better than through a closed door.
But it also made me realize that the family ties in often non-American families are so strong in a way that is great. I mean, we can say in America, don't speak to your parents, cut them out of your life, because I feel that the whole family bond is so fundamentally weakened. And that's what really made me cry, was reading the book, was like how close the family were. And even though there were these issues and disagreements, but it's all worth working for. And I feel sometimes in America we just sort of dismiss it, and I just feel we've lost this connection. It made me cry, but I was like sad. And
how has the book been received in the Persian community?
Very well. I mean, I think for me, in a lot of ways, the book is also a metaphor for my childhood, because Daria is somebody who very much kind of wants to be part of the Persian community, but because of who she is and because she doesn't want to get a nose job and doesn't really care about Chanel bags, she also kind of wants to rebel against it. And I think that was my journey as a gay Iranian, kind of always loving my culture so much and my family so much. And at the same time,
but you grew up in Beverly Hills. You grew up in
no. I moved around. I left after the revolution. My family moved, and then we were basically going from country to country until I was 10. So we first went to France, then to Canada, and then finally to the U.S.
And yet 10. You have a Southern California accent. Well, how does that happen?
I don't know. You know what? I watch too many movies. But no, so I think within the Persian community, one thing that's been so moving for me, honestly, and it makes me cry, is the fact that writing a book like this allows me to feel a sense of acceptance from them. Like, I've had so many Iranian people just be interested in the book, support the book, talk about how proud they are. We are a very tribal culture, and there's a sense of pride. Every time an Iranian succeeds, all Iranians kind of like clamor around them.
That's nice.
And the culture's changing. I mean, recently, and I think it's all because I have books out and people are interested, but recently I was contacted by someone who wanted me to go to speak to a support group of parents of LGBTQ Iranians. The whole support group is parents of LGBTQ Iranians, and this would never have existed when I was of the age to come out. It's the first. I mean, I really think it's the first of its kind. And it wasn't just moms. Was the other thing? It was dads.
That's so
and
cool.
I was.
How was it?
It was one of the most moving experiences of my life. Like,
and do you find
incredible.
that the parents are coming to accept it?
They're incredibly accepting.
Good.
They are very open. Just the fact that they're walking into that room is already such a huge sign of how far we've come as a culture. But they were so curious. They had so many questions. They were very interested in the fact that I was a dad. They were, it was so moving. And so to me, it's just the Iranian culture is changing, and it's changing here and in Iran. That's why I have a character in the book who's an aunt who's visiting from Tehran. And I think
she's pretty fabulous
who I love too. And I think the reason that character was so important to me is that I wanted to show how, in some cases, a woman who's living in Iran and wearing a chador every day can be even more progressive than the fabulous Beverly Hills mom, because her sister is the fabulous Chanel-wearing Beverly Hills mom, who might go to performance artists, but who deep down still has that lingering homophobia and racism that we show in the book. And so I also wanted to show that within Iran, there's things changing and progressive things happening, because I still have family and friends there, and their lives are so different than what is depicted in the media. I mean, it's just not, the country of Iran and the culture of Iranians is so far from what people think it is.
So we can look forward to the Authentics as a Saturday morning cartoon,
Theme park ride.
a TV series. Have you had any discussions about bringing it to life?
I've had discussions. I hope it happens. I mean,
It really sounds. It's really. It is. There's a universality of these stories
Yes.
that you don't have to be Iranian to get sucked into
No,
because
not at
because
all.
there are things that we all identify.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a book about figuring out who you are, not fitting in, and I think as teenagers, like you said, we're all screwed up as teenagers.
Every teenager
is figuring out how they fit into the world, how they define themselves, and so
In every
that's what
group,
it's about.
you're always looking to the other group to thinking that they've got it made,
That's
and that
right.
group they're all screwed up themselves.
And we're all immigrants in some way,
Well,
honestly. I mean,
exactly, right?
this
It's
question
very
of
it's so
immigration
timely
as we're going through what we're
is on
going
the
through
front
today. I
burner.
mean,
Yes. We are a nation of immigrants, and
We
it's
are
all
a
about
nation of
accepting
immigrants.
each other and understanding each other. And
yes.
I do want to just sort of
Yeah.
bring up very quickly that you were a club kid in the 90s.
Yes!
And that you
We're
were
reunited.
you were Papa
a
Smurf.
a very
What?
minor club
You were
kid.
Papa
I was
Smurf.
Papa Smurf.
Were you rolling with the Rocky Raccoons? Is that who you were with?
So I went to Columbia University.
Okay.
And the very first day of my freshman year, I was a crazy kid.
Uh-huh.
And I come from an immigrant culture, so I just wanted to, bust out of my shell. And so I found this group of kids who we immediately looked at each other and said, "Oh, we're like-minded," and we went to the clubs. And so that whole year we went to the clubs, and you and all the club kids were my heroes. I mean, I grew up obsessed with old movies.
So this was in New York. This
was in New York.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I was going to Disco 2000. I was going to
it.
Limelight, to Sound Factory, and so
Did I molest you at any point?
no, other people maybe. No, but really, I found club culture because I grew up obsessed with old Hollywood and Joan Crawford and Marilyn and all these self-created people who kind of created fabulous new identities because they didn't,
Right. Yeah. Branding and iconography.
Right,
yeah.
and the club kids were a version of that, and so I kind of found myself there, and I just went wild. And yeah, I loved the Smurfs growing up, and so I would only dress in blue, and I would put blue in my hair.
do you have any pictures? We have to post
Can
a
we-
I
picture
don't
on
have
the
them
Wow
here,
Report.
but yes, I can find you some
Send it
pictures.
to us and
But
we'll
you
put
know
it
what
up.
happened is the summer of my freshman year, we were at, I think it was Global 33, and Richie Rich walked in, and a group of us were there, and he talked about Michael Alec killing Angel.
Okay.
who Angel had dated a friend of mine from Columbia for for a few weeks or something. And I remember kind of this moment of hearing about this murder and thinking what are college parties like? Maybe
I mean, over my
maybe
head.
the clubs are a little too much for this, 18-year-old. But it was fabulous.
Well, it's so funny that we've come full circle here.
Yeah.
Right.
And also,
Yeah,
I think
look
we
at
should
us.
also mention Abdi was the writer of the Menendez.
Menendez Blood Brothers.
Yes.
The Lifetime
Right.
movie that
That's
Randy and I
right.
directed. Yeah.
Brilliantly directed.
With Nico and Maiko and Courtney Love.
Miss Courtney Love, who
Yes,
as Fenton knows, I'm
carry
a
a torch.
fangirl.
Oh,
I
yeah.
completely fangirled out, and she was and is as fabulous as I would
Was
ever
it when
have
you
hoped.
met her? Was it? It was. How is it different to what you'd expected when you met her?
It was so much better because Courtney was a
Because
huge.
it could have been so much less.
It could have been so much less, but she really was. Her 2 albums, Live Through This, came out when I was in college, and I would blast it with my friends.
It was
and
seminal.
so seminal. cathartic. And then Celebrity Skin, which was such an LA album, came out when I moved to LA. And so here I am, this kid moving to LA, which was always my dream to live in Hollywood, and I get to listen to Celebrity Skin and Malibu and all these songs. So, she soundtracked kind of 2 of the most important phases of my life, and I will say I was a little nervous. And then
you
when
didn't show it. You were very.
I didn't. Well, I
nice
can
and
stay
very
cool.
calm.
but what I thought was so great was just that, as always happens with iconic people and celebrities, once you get past that veneer, they're usually people, and she's
Right.
kind, and she's curious, and she's interested in so many things, and I just was. You understand why someone like Courtney Love becomes Courtney Love because she's smart and has
Yeah.
a lot of interesting things to say. So
And
it
she's
was
so
a dream.
personable. Like that sort of that myth that precedes her.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. Like the moment you meet her, it's like, oh,
Right.
you're Courtney. It's like you're like a person.
Yes.
And she was just on so committed and accessible and friendly and warm and
Yeah.
vulnerable and compassionate. I mean, just an amazing person.
And very self-aware too,
Yeah.
which I like. Like when I would talk to her about, what those albums meant to me or about her work, she kind of can talk to you about that in a way where she understands how she's perceived versus who she is, and what effect work can have on people, especially when they're young. So I was very impressed with that, because I think some people don't. It's hard for them to step outside of themselves,
Right.
And I thought
Right.
there
very
was an
true.
empathy there, I guess,
Yeah.
which I think is very moving, coming
Yeah.
from someone who has been turned into an icon and a symbol by so
Yes.
many people.
I felt this sort of extraordinary sort of mother vibe. I kept on
Yeah.
touching her, and I was thinking, at one point I thought, "What are you doing?" You don't normally, because I'm British, we don't normally touch people. And it's like, but she was so sort of, huggable. Anyway,
It was the best experience. I
Abdi,
loved it.
you wrote
And
a brilliant script.
I
You've
really I
written-
enjoyed it so much. It was
Thank
it's
you.
so good. It's so fabulous.
You've written a brilliant novel. And I'd like to thank all our authors, Abdi and Jacquie and Victor and Josh, because the library is open and reading is fundamental.
reading is fundamental.
So, yes. One last thing, guys. This weekend, it's DragCon NYC. the
That's
debut.
right. Oh my
You'll be
God,
there,
I'll be there. I'll
James.
definitely be there.
Yeah, so throw on your highest wig, September 9th and 10th at the Javits Center. More information, RuPaul'sDragCon.com. VIP tickets are sold out, but still weekend passes, single days, and tickets to the two parties. 9 from 9 on Friday, September 8th, and Battle on the Runway, Saturday, September 9th. Again, all at RuPaul'sDragCon.com. All this and more stories on the WOW Report, worldofwonder.net/Radio Andy, right?
Yeah, that's it.
I cannot do
You got it. No, you did it, baby. You're
Thanks
fine.
for tuning into the WOW Report on Radio Andy SiriusXM anytime on the Sirius Radio app, or watch anytime on the WOW Report.
And go out and read something that makes you go, wow.